Okay, so let's go.
Let's go.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to Before the Valley. Hello, Nikolay. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you? How do you feel after that pill you took a few hours ago? And it's not drugs. It's not anything special.
At this point, I don't know if it might have been drugs. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Because I took a pill. It's food supplements that a friend of mine left at my place. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to try it, you know. And on the package, I could read specifically, it said, you have to take it with food. But I'm doing my fasting as well. So I didn't take it with the food. I took it without the food. And
so you knew that you should have eaten, and this is when you took it, or you saw that you should have eaten after you took it?
No, it was like, because the thing is, you would see this different kind of pills. They would always like write, take it with food, and I would sometimes take them without food.
They do it for a reason,
and it's fine. Well, usually it's fine, but this time I took the pill, and it was like an hour of like I was gonna throw up basically. I ate afterwards, so now I'm feeling fine. I feel energized. Maybe it's the food supplements, so maybe they did actually work, and I'm ready to go.
So the dedication brought you here.
Even the dedication also brought me here, yes.
Yeah, you could have died 1 hour ago. Your mindset was like, today is the podcast day and I need to do it.
Yeah, exactly. It's the risk I'm taking for the show. The show must go on.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, do you want to start with the first topic?
Yeah, so as you know already, today we wanted to try something else, something different. And I was thinking that it makes sense to try this new method, because the whole thing of the podcast, whole idea is to do things and like discern the methods of all these high achievers and then test them in order to reach this, like find the formula for success, or for I don't know, to be more effective, to be living the life to the fullest, to be a high achiever. This is what we're trying to do in this podcast. And I finished the book, The Effective Executive, and I read a very interesting thing about decision making. He was basically describing a guide in terms of what to think about before making decisions and how to make effective decisions. And Peter Drucker, the guy who I've mentioned several times during this podcast, something interesting, was regarded as the founding father of the study of management. And in 2002, he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Bush. So this is basically showing that this is a high achiever. He found something, he wrote it down in this book, and now we're trying to actually test it or analyze it in order to see if more people can try it, and especially us and our audience. So yeah, today we're going to be discussing his method of making decisions. And I think it's going to be very practical and very useful.
Do you know what his experience is? Why is it so... Sorry, there might be a bit of a background noise, but do you know what this guy's experience is, and why is he so successful? Why is the book so successful?
Well, to be honest, he was... First of all, there is a description on the back of the book. He was newspaper correspondent, afterwards an economist for International Bank in London. Afterwards, he became a consultant for several big companies. So he has seen a lot when it comes to executives and what makes effective executives, which is what I think he based this book on.
Okay, and why do you think this sustained through time? Because obviously business back then and now it's quite different. I think he wrote the book back in the 60s, if I'm not mistaken, or it might even be the 50s. So I'm thinking, after reading the book, why do you think it's still that useful?
Because he's describing some principles, some principles that people can follow in order to make effective decisions. The whole nature of decision making has not changed. The environment in which we make decisions has changed, but the principle that he described, I see them as very applicable to even our business, and I'm gonna cover some of it while we discuss this, because reading about decision making and the way he described it, I was thinking like, wait, we did this in PP Network, or we're gonna do this in the new venture. And yeah, I think that he basically describes eternal principles for decision making, like the philosophy of some philosopher that we've discussed. It's something that sustains over time.
Yeah, I see. Okay, let's go for it.
Okay, so yeah, it's gonna be a very practical podcast, especially the first part of it. And we're gonna be discussing how to make effective decisions. It's something that Peter does not know about, so we're gonna be analyzing it and see how we can see what this guy wrote from our perspective. I think that this is also
exactly.
very valuable.
I think the listeners would be able to associate with someone who hasn't heard it in advance, so it would be useful for them as well.
Yeah. So I'm the expert, or there's this pressure,
and I'll be asking the questions.
Book. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, yes.
So I thought it's gonna be good to start one by one, and afterwards give the whole framework of his concept. So the first thing when making decisions is obviously to see in what context are we gonna be making the decisions, or in other words, to see what kind of problem we're facing. And he's saying the first question of the effective decision maker is this a generic situation or an exception? Is this something that underlines a great many occurrences, or is the occurrence a unique event that needs to be dealt with as such? So he described that there are 4 types of problems, not 2, not only generic and unique ones. There are 4 types of problems. The first one is the generic problem, something that is happening on a daily basis, and even though it might be the first time that it's happening for us, when we see it in a week or 2 weeks, we see that it's something generic, something that's repeating over time. And there is like an example. So typically a product control and engineering group will handle many hundreds of problems in the course of a month. So you see something happening over time and repeating. Yet, whenever these are analyzed, the great majority prove to be just symptoms and manifestation of underlying basic situation. So there is something behind all of those problems, which is the actual thing, the core problem that needs to be tackled. These are the generic problems. Point 1. I'm going to cover all of them. We can discuss them afterwards. So it's going to give a better idea. The second one is the type of problems that are unique for us, but are not unique for like the world in overall, in general. Which means that it might be something unique for you now, but your competition or somebody else could have faced it before. So therefore, in such cases, he's saying for these, however, one has to look to the experience of others. So for these unique problems for yourself initially, you learn from others. The third one, next, is a truly exceptional, the truly unique event. And he gives a very good example, which is very important. I'm gonna illustrate why. The power failure that plunged into darkness the whole of Northeast and North America from the St. Lawrence to Washington in November 1965 was, according to the first explanation, a truly exceptional situation. So that's an exceptional situation which happens once, has not happened before anywhere else, and is the first time somebody faced it. Like, let's say COVID. It's something that, I mean, COVID is not a good example because there were like similar situations before that. But there are some specific peculiarities for it. But the power failure that plunged into darkness a great deal of northern eastern North America was a unique event back then. So in such situation, you have to take specific actions, unique actions. And the 4 type of problems are related to the question, is this a true exception or only the first manifestation of a new genus? And this, the early manifestation of a new generic problem, is the 4th and last category of events which the decision process deals. So the unique example from before, the power failure, we know now, for instance, that both the northern eastern power failure and another example is something that is happening quite often and is considered as a normal generic problem. So you see something that has never happened before, it's unique at that instance, but in time you realize that it's the first manifestation of a generic problem.
So would you say that coronavirus would be the 4th type of a problem? Because obviously we had the Spanish flu before, let's say, and now when corona came, we thought, okay, that's something unique, but doing some research, it shows you that in fact this has happened before. So do you think that's a case of the fourth type of problem, or?
I think actually it could be even the first type because it's specific. Or yeah, it could be the fourth because it's specific, but it has happened before. It's gonna happen as well in the future.
So the difference between the first and the fourth is that the fourth is repetitive, but you see the first instance of it. So you might think it's actually the third type of problem, when in fact it's something that is going to reoccur in the future. While the first type of problem is something that has happened in the past.
Yeah. So, it's a very generic, something that's quite obviously that's repeating over time. And here the thing is that all events, but truly unique, require a generic solution. They require a rule, a policy, a principle. And the effective executive or the effective person making decisions, as he's saying, he always assumes that the event that clamors for his attention is in reality just a symptom. It's never unique. He looks for the true problem. He is not content with doctoring the symptom alone. And this is also explaining why the effective decision maker always tries to put his solution on the highest possible conceptual level. So why I think that, just to give you my point of view after reading it, I see that every single problem is to some extent generic. Or you have to start with the assumption that it's a generic problem, and therefore you have to implement a rule or a policy behind it in order to prevent it from happening in the future. So this is from almost every single case. On the other hand, what the greatest mistake is to take specific actions for a specific problem, and the next day or the next month you'd have to deal with something similar, but you have to do the same thing. You have to deal with it again, instead of having this principle or rule which is solving it beforehand.
So would you say that what makes the problem generic is the reason for the problem? So if you have the same reason causing the problem, for example, lack of policy, let's say, that can deal with viruses in a better way, or let's say if you have problem with your employees, every new employee is making too many mistakes, so maybe the lack of proper training is the reason that makes all of these mistakes that employees make generic in a way.
And occurring in the future if you don't implement the rule or the policy which is going to stop them.
Yeah, but my question is rather, would you say that's because of the reason, whatever causes the problem in the first place? Is that what makes them generic?
I would say that what makes them generic is the idea that they repeat. It's not something specific, unique, that you have to deal with it in the instance. This is, I think, what makes them generic.
Yeah, but if you deal with the cause of the problem, it would stop repeating itself.
Yeah, that's the idea. That you have to stop the cause, which is at a more basic level of the problem. I mean, more conceptual level, rather than very specific and unique. And
because this reminds me of Eric Rice's 5 whys system in a way. Because asking the 5 whys gets you to the root cause of a problem. And once you get to the root cause of a problem, you can deal with that particular root cause. So these reoccurring issues that you have in your company, let's say, again, the example with employees making a lot of mistakes when they first come into the company. If you ask yourself, why are the employees making that many mistakes? Because they're not prepared. Why are they not prepared? And then you go on with the whys. It's 5 whys. And at the end, you're going to come to the root cause, which is the lack of a training program. So if there is no training program, and if you invest into that training program, you fix all of these problems for the future. Yeah. So it really reminds me of Eric Rice's 5 whys of solving problems.
I also see a great resemblance between both. And the idea is that you prevent these problems from happening again, because it's a generic problem. It's not a specific problem. Like going to your employee, speaking with him, why are you not working to the level that I want you to? And then the next week you're gonna go to another employee. Instead, you just implement a rule or a policy which overcomes all of this. And this is illustrated with a very good quote. A country with many laws is a country of incompetent lawyers. Which is, if you have many laws for every single situation, this means that your lawyers did not sit back and think about the whole generic situation of how can we implement less laws but at the same time solve all of these decisions, something which is overaching the whole problem.
Yes, because you're trying to solve specific situations rather than finding the root cause and solving the root cause of the for all of these problems.
Yeah, and this is not effective because he's saying that similarly, an executive who makes many decisions is both lazy and ineffectual. Therefore, in order to be effective as a decision maker, and this is not only for executives, I want to make this clear that it's about every person who is making decisions about, I don't know, like even our decisions on a daily basis, when we face problems which are repeating over time, you have to implement something like personal policy which is stopping them from repeating. So it's not only for CEOs or those at the top of the corporate ladder, I would say. So yeah, this is point one. And it's something that's been tested, like he says here. These are, in essence, the rules Hippocrates laid down for medical diagnosis well over 2,000 years ago. So we go back. Why did this guy write a book 50 years ago? Why is it applicable? He's referring to Hippocrates 2,000 years ago. Like, there are some principles, I think, which, if followed, could lead to, I don't know, like, realization of how things are, actually.
Yeah, it's a good analogy. You have symptoms and you have the actual illness. So you don't... If you treat the symptoms, the illness is not gonna go away. So you try to find what the illness is. Yeah.
Alright. So this is point one. It was a bit of a longer one. Point two is that I'm gonna read. The second major element in the decision process is clear specification as to what the decision has to accomplish. And there are some practical questions. What are the objectives the decision has to reach? What are the minimum goals it has to attain? And what are the conditions it has to satisfy? And in science, this is called boundary conditions. So the more concise and clear you have those boundaries, the greater the likelihood that the decision will indeed be an effective one. Because you're going to know what you need to accomplish with your decision. You go for the decision and you follow whether you accomplish what you decided beforehand.
So it could be translated as focus on the results from the decision and what you actually want to get to
accomplish. Yeah.
Yes.
Because otherwise,
by specifying your particular objective.
Yeah. Because otherwise it could be making decisions without any clear reason of why are we making them, like what do we want to achieve. It could lead to making one decision, then leaving the flow of things to decide whether you're happy with it or no. Instead, you have to be more effective and decide what's up, what they want to achieve for the decision. And I was thinking that, because I told you that I found many of these things applicable to PP Network. Currently, with the new business idea that we have, like the new branch of PP Network, this is what we've discussed with the team, that we need to set up specific goals for every single service or product that we want to provide. And afterwards, focus our decisions following the results, which are set prior to doing them. So I saw some relation between these two.
It's also where I see an analogy is setting SMART objectives. SMART is an acronym for, I wouldn't remember all of the letters, but basically realistic, and all of that. It's one of them was specific. The S is specific. So by being specific with your goals, if you quantify them, let's say, but also make them realistic and you can Google the SMART acronym and check what all the other letters means. But by doing all of this, you set your goals and you set the results you want to achieve in advance. So your objective is very, very clear. So you know what you want to achieve with the decision you're making. So I see it as an analogy to this.
Yeah. However, something I think quite important is not to mislead the audience is that it's not always easy to set those boundaries. And especially in corporate environments, when you have different people thinking about different boundaries, you're going to have some clash. But it's for another podcast to discuss why those disagreements are very, very important, because this guy is just giving great explanation, but I don't think it's relevant for today. Third point is that one has to start out with what is right rather than what is acceptable, precisely because one always has to compromise in the end. But if one does not know what is right to satisfy, the specifications and boundary conditions one cannot distinguish between the right compromise and the wrong compromise, and will end up by making the wrong compromise. Like, it's kind of confusing, but here is an example. For these, there are two different kinds of compromise. One kind is expressed in the old proverb, half a loaf or bread is better than no bread, because it's gonna feed at least somebody, right? However, the other kind is expressed in the story of the judgment of Solomon, which was clearly based on the realization that half a baby is worse than no baby at all. In this first instance, for the loaf, the bread, the boundary conditions are still being satisfied. If your boundary conditions is we need to feed X amount of people, even half a bread is going to satisfy them to some extent. You have to make compromise depending on your circumstances, your environment. The purpose of the bread is to provide food, and half of loaf is still a food. It's still food. Half a baby, however, does not satisfy the boundary condition. For half a baby is not half of a living and growing child. It is a corpse in two pieces. So therefore, because you have to make some compromise, you cannot get the baby out. Like, this is a very strange illustration, but you cannot get something before it's ready. You need it to be fully prepared and ready, right? And this compromise is not good. It's not something that is gonna at least help you achieve some of your decision.
Yeah, the example with the baby and the bread reminds me of something I learned from my product management course. So one thing they were saying, my lecturers, was it's very important to be careful with your MVPs, minimum viable products, when you're a big company that already has a brand. So if you release half a product that might be so detrimental for your brand that it won't be worth it, the validated learning you're going to get from the MVP. So it's the same way, instead of getting half a product out, which would lead to bad results, in the same way as half a baby would be bad results, you can get a full baby. So it's not a full bread and half a bread, but it's more of, the baby analogy. And I can see how the borders of the problem can define the problem, so to speak. The context is defined in this way. And like, you have to make a decision depending on this.
Yeah, sorry. Like, the whole idea of this is that in decision-making process, you always have to make a compromise, and you have to, like, knowing what you want to achieve, you start with the right stuff. So with the greatest thing that you want to achieve for this decision, which is, let's say, to get a full bread in the end. But if you see that things do not work out, getting that bread half is still a good decision, because you know what your boundary is. And you can make this compromise, but making the right compromise is essential for the end result.
Yeah, exactly. So making a compromise in a different context might halven your baby, so to speak.
Yeah, it might lead to, like, your whole decision becoming invalid. Like, even though you put effort into it, even though that you wanted to achieve something big, you saw that you couldn't do it, and your compromise led to make it all, like, I don't know, impractical or just useless. So this is point 3.4, very crucial one, which I shared with the PPN team the other day. Converting the decision into action is the fourth major element in the decision process. Yet the decision will not become effective unless the action commitments have been built into the decision from the start. In fact, no decision has been made unless carrying it out in the specific steps has become someone's work assignment and responsibility. Until then, all of these decisions and the discussions around them are just good intentions. This is crucial. Like,
I agree.
Because you can discuss stuff, you can, let's say in PP Network, you have a team talk, we have great decisions to make, but in the end we leave it blank who's gonna make it. And this leads to nobody making the decision, because there are so many issues behind it, like the free rider problem, which means that everybody would expect the rest, other to do them, and there is no clear responsibility of somebody saying, okay, this is my task, I'm gonna focus on it, and I'm gonna deliver in order to meet the expectations of the rest of the team.
I think this has been particularly relevant for our own experience, because when you're building a startup, initially there are no clear responsibilities, and the roles are not that well split up. So you don't know what you're in charge of. So if you don't specify it while making the decision with your team, there's a high chance that no one takes accountability for that action, and then no one executes that action. So if you don't have clear responsibilities set, you're not working at a company, or you're working on an innovative product, so the tasks haven't been executed by someone in your team before, then this problem would occur. So it's especially relevant for startups, I think. And for that's why it's so, we know that problem so well, because it's been a problem for us when we were starting our business.
And we've seen how crucial it is to set clear responsibilities in terms of who's going to do what, because this also frees the mind of your counterparty, like your partner. Because let's say for this podcast, even as 2 weeks ago, we agreed that you're going to do X, I'm going to do Y. And I had to be worrying only about Y. You had to be worrying only about X. Not to have this chaos of everybody doing something, but because we had the clear responsibilities and the decisions which we made were assigned to somebody. And there are some practical questions here which I think are going to be useful for the audience and for everybody who's interested in making decisions, but we do this on a daily basis, which is, who has to know of this decision? What action has to be taken? Who is to take it? And what does the action have to be so that the people who have to do it can do it? And considering all of this, first point is that if you have to assign a task to somebody, you have to consider his capabilities. It shouldn't be a random thing. And the second thing is that metrics should be changed as well. So let's say that you change the whole focus of your company. You want to focus on providing a very, very good service, and you want to focus on improving this service to the extent that it's becoming the best in the market. Until now, your metrics have been revenue. So if you keep those metrics as revenue, all the people down the chain or within your company are gonna keep that focus on reaching out, increasing the revenue, even though that they are aware that your goal is to make a better service. However, if you change the metrics in terms of having an update every week, or adding a new product to the whole concept of the service, this is gonna make those people focus on the whole idea of improving the service. So changing the metrics as well is essential.
Yes, this is something Alex Schultz speaks. Alex Schultz is one of the growth directors in Facebook. So he was saying it's very important to set the metrics you're looking at initially, to set them right, because the whole company would be looking at those metrics, and that sets the focus of everyone in the company. That determines their decisions in the future, because you often have to make compromise between revenue, let's say, and growth, current growth. So if that's the case, then they know, okay, we need to focus on that new metric instead of revenue.
And this is going to guide them, because it's easier to follow a metric. This is what people expect from you, rather than just the simple idea of, okay, we need to make this product better or something else. So metrics are good guidance and are crucial. They need to match very well with the decision which is made. And Peter, we've reached the last point here, which is feedback. And we've discussed this yesterday with you because I thought that this is essential for us as well. And we didn't know that we were going to discuss this topic today. So I said, okay, Peter, let me share something with you very interesting. So Peter Drucker, he's explaining how crucial feedback is. And he's saying that at the least, an executive or a person who is making a decision needs to send one of his own aides or go to collect this feedback himself, because he never relies on what he's told by the subordinate to whom the order was given. And this is not because he distrusts the subordinate. He has learned from experience to distrust communication, because communication can be misleading. It's not providing the whole picture. And failure to go out and look is a typical reason for persisting in a course of action long after it has ceased to be appropriate or even rational. Therefore, when you go out there, you collect the feedback yourself, or your aides, like your closest, which are not related to the decision which is being made. You have the live picture of what's going on, and you adapt your decisions, or you make some changes which are relevant to the current situation, rather than relevant to the decision which you made 5 days ago, 1 month ago.
Yeah, that's because there's usually a delay between you analyzing reports and the moment the data is collected for the reports. So there's usually some gap, which in that gap stuff can change. So
yeah,
it's very often, I agree, it's very often it's better to just go to the place before making the actual decision to kind of see if in fact the numbers correspond to what the actual situation is. And there's one more thing that I wanted to mention. I told you yesterday as well. This is that's the same reason you collect qualitative data as well. Well, you collect qualitative data because the numbers don't tell the whole story. So it might be better to ask the people on the spot, ask them and collect qualitative data. What this means is ask them why they are this number in your report and not a different number in your report, while they do one thing and another thing. Because if you're looking at only the numbers, then you're making assumptions of why people are doing something. And that's often why people are doing something is often very relevant for the decision you have to make. So that's another reason for collecting direct feedback and so qualitative data as well, not only quantitative.
But what you said and what I said is not to undermine the importance of reports, right? Because reports give one part of the picture. They give you this fixed state in the existence of your company, what happened at this point of time, or it's giving you like a picture over a whole period of time, like 10 years or 5 years, depending on what's relevant. And afterwards, your picture, like you seeing things in the current moment, is helping you get a better idea. And I thought it's gonna be good to just give a example of why the author was describing the importance of feedback, and I shared it with you yesterday, but not in detail. So when General Eisenhower was elected president, General Eisenhower, like I don't know if we need to give some background information, but I assume that our listeners know who he is. His predecessor, Harry Truman, said, "Poor Ike," this was his name of Eisenhower, "when he was a general, he gave an order and it was carried out. Now he is going to sit in that big office and he'll give an order and not a damn thing is going to happen." This is what Harry Truman said. And the reason why not a damn thing is going to happen is, however, not that the generals have more authority than presidents. It depends on the country, what state the country is, of course. But in general, presidents have a lot of power. And it is that the military organizations learned long ago that futility is the lot of most orders and organize the feedback to check on the execution of the order. So if a general orders something, he goes there and checks if his soldiers completed it, and based on that and seeing what they do, he either changes his decision or the people that are gonna do it. While the president is sitting in this big the White House, or our president, who's, I don't know how much authority he has, but yeah, they make decisions based on reports, and they're quite kind of like isolated from reality. So this is the great importance of feedback. And these are the 5 steps. Step 1, identify what the problem is, what is generic, unique, or any of the other 2, like which we mentioned before that. Point 2 is define clearly what you want to accomplish. Point 3, think about what can you compromise on if things don't go well. And this is in order to avoid compromising things which make your decision just useless. Point 4 is set a person behind the decision who's responsible for accomplishing it. And point 5, which is something that we've been discussing when it comes to feedback a lot, MVPs, how you need to collect feedback constantly, is that you need to collect this feedback not only from reports, but also from the situation where things are happening, or in other words, to have this live or up-to-date idea of how things are going on. And all of this leads to effective decision making.
Yeah, and I think trying to make decisions based on these 5 points might seem a bit intimidating initially, because it might seem very theoretical and something that you cannot think in advance before making every decision. However, how I see it is, it's like building habits. You go slow. First you start thinking about the habit and what you have to do. For example, collect direct feedback. Before making a decision, you think on, oh wait, I read that in the book or I heard it in the podcast. Let's go and collect direct feedback as well, and not only justify my decision based on the reports. So you do that once, twice, 3 times, and then with time, it becomes a habit of yours. So you stop thinking on it consciously. So it might seem intimidating initially, but you can build it slowly, I think. And also with time, it becomes very intuitive because you've did it quite a few times now.
And I agree 100% with what you just said. And I'll add to this is that the described framework is not what you need to do, like what actions you need to take, but it's kind of giving the framework of where your actions need to be. And there is a very, very big gap in between the framework in terms of what the specific situation is, what you have to do, and how good are you at analyzing situations. So this is kind of the framework which eliminates the chaos or you going to different tangents when it comes to making decisions.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was quite thorough, and I think people would find it valuable though, because it was very interesting stories, as well as the theoretical side itself. Do you want to jump into the second one?
Well, the thing is that we've been discussing the 5 points for a bit longer than expected, and I was thinking that we can end this episode now, and we can discuss the second topic in another episode, because otherwise it's gonna be like an hour more.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm interested to see the feedback of people in this new format that we are trying. So let's see what people think about it, and we can discuss the next topic in our next episode.
Okay, but the podcast is something that goes together with a quote every single time. So I'm thinking that the quote is still something that we can share with our audience. Do you want to go for it?
It's my turn, so yes.
Yes, it's your turn.
Okay, so the quote is by Jerzy Gregorek. He is a Polish man who was an alcoholic in his young life, but then became the 4-time world weightlifting champion. So it's a person who transformed his life. He's mentioned by people who try to apply the Stoic philosophy, like Tim Ferriss and Ryan Holiday. So we thought this quote would be quite relevant to what we are talking about today as well. And
Decisions.
You'll see why. Yeah, decisions. So the quote is: easy choices, hard life. Hard choices, easy life. And that's it.
Yeah. Nice. I would give you, because I'm a objective friend of yours, I'm not competing directly, I'm gonna give you a 9 out of 10 because...
Oh, 9 again, thank you.
Yeah. So it's better than my turn last time. And but something I want to say...
Yeah, sure, go ahead. Yeah. I was just gonna say this is a bit like diving. So this quote was very short, so it was easier. So you know when divers make like the easy moves when diving, so they would get lower scores because of how easy the move was. So I think I should get a 8.5 just because the quote was 8 words in total. Okay,
so if you want to take 8.5,
that's the objective thing to do. Yeah.
Okay. Something I want to say is that this guy, he basically started from scratch and making hard decisions, which is what we were describing in this podcast, like how to make those hard decisions in an effective way. He made his life easier and effective in overall, in general, which goes back to the point that tackling problems and different situations, you have to make hard decisions, but making those hard decisions effectively and analyzing the whole situation is going to lead to you not facing this problem in the long term, and hence making your life easier. I think that there is a very good relation here between what we've discussed.
Yeah, and I'm thinking it's also easy in terms of complexity, because usually compounding problems bring anxiety and chaos into your life just because you have, I don't know, 100 problems to solve in your company instead of solving them once and then them not reoccurring. So I think your life becomes easy in terms of complexity as well, and not just in terms of the effort you put into it.
I agree. All right. Good. So, yeah, as you said, we are trying this new type of format for the podcast. We hope that it's more practical, more related to what the whole idea of the podcast is. And we would appreciate any kind of feedback. And this was all for today. Anything else to add, Peter?
No,
I just said that this was all for today, but anything else to add?
Well, thank you for watching, and please leave your feedback as always.
Yeah, all right. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
See ya.